I'm going to start a speaking note. We are here in committee to discuss the motion of Madame Sigla Desgagnés, which includes an amendment from Ms. Cahill. I'm going to read again, you've heard this, but just to get it on the public record, the information that's been provided to this committee. Written responses provided to the committee are not considered to be confidential. Examples of confidential documents include in-camera blues, draft calendars, logistics items.
Point of order, Chair? If you can perhaps kind of start from the top, because I know that we had our discussions, but people that are watching may not remember what the motion is about and what the amendment is about.
Well,
so
I'm going to turn it right over to Madame Sigla Desgagnés. I'm just setting the table here about this, and then I'm going to hear from members. I just want to inform members of the facts, I suppose, as understood by the House of Commons and committees, and then we will hear from members to review the issue at hand. I'm just going to begin at the top. Written responses provided to the committee are not considered to be confidential. Examples of confidential documents include in-camera blues, draft calendars, logistics items, contracts, catering forms, notices of motion. As I said, though, a member is, of course, free to make public their motion anytime they see fit. Draft reports and dissenting supplementary opinions, witness paperwork, witness lists, and any summons. Madame Sigla Desgagnés, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my colleagues for making this meeting public, because I think it is of general public interest to really go over what has happened in this committee, which is something very special. And there has to be equity when it comes to the various media who are the fourth column in Quebec and Canada.
I would like to reread the text of the motion for those listening to us, given that the information contained in the written response from the Treasury Board Secretariat, which was transmitted to committee members on April 15th, 2024, appears to have been disclosed to a Globe and Mail journalist, as per the article entitled "Three Firms Tied to Arrive Canada app Got $1 billion in Federal Contracts, Ottawa reveals," published on the 13th of May 2024, that the committee make public on its website the said documents sent in the written response from the Treasury Board Secretariat dated April 15th, 2024. I've spoken to this already, and I would like us to deal with this quickly. I don't want to go on and on about it, but to ensure fairness, in particular, with regard to Francophone media that did not have access to this information in French, as they should have, given that this information, these documents, were sent to solely a single journalist of an Anglophone media outlet, I think it's important to ensure that these documents be officially made public, accessible to the public. And given that this was a response to a question that was put in public, there's no inconvenience in ensuring that a response also be given in public. And I hope that my colleagues will support this motion so that we can move quickly on to other business, having settled this matter in an acceptable fashion. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you so much, Chair. Indeed, I greatly appreciate the information, the additional information that you have provided to the committee with regard to documents of a confidential nature, what's held to be confidential, yes or no, here in Parliament. I must admit that I too have been truly disturbed by the fact that the documents were leaked in the fashion that they were. Because I don't think that's a committee practice. It's not a practice in this committee and it's something we may need to look at more fully at some other point with a ruling from the committee because, or in the rulings of the committee, because I think that our reports are important. The way we write our reports is important, and releasing documents inappropriately, documents that hadn't been discussed in public and that had been provided to the committee in writing, in confidence, I think that this is really something that, is very nefarious. It really interferes with our ability to do good work here in our committee. So I think we should vote on this motion in short order.
I have to address, which is, and Ms. Clayton, I'm going to turn to you right after hearing from Mr. Desjardins because you have an amendment to the motion. So I have to deal with that first, I believe. No, it was tabled, yeah. So I do have to deal with that. Mr. Desjardins, you have the floor. I believe you asked to speak. Yes.
No, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I agree with our Bloc colleague and with my Liberal colleagues that we do need to ensure that the public has access to information. I hope that we can get unanimous consent by all members here to actually ensure that the information that is shared with the public is done in an equal and equitable fashion. Media outlets, particularly in Quebec, Alberta, for example, there's different media outlets across the country. And I think it's important that we actually make fair and equal the distribution of these documents. It's not okay to the point that the amendment of Ms. Khalid, that seems to be a perception that certain documents are given to certain journalists, and the question becomes in exchange for what? Why do certain journalists have access to this information and only them have access to the information for the purpose of a story? And it seems to me like preferential outcome of a story. And so I think this nips it in the bud, making all documents related to this public and available. And I also think that it's incumbent upon us now to try to understand what happened here, what took place, why and who is pulling the strings behind this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Khalid, anything you'd like to say, but as well, I hope you'll address the amendment as well.
Thank you, Chair, and I believe that it is the amendment that is under discussion right now as per House procedure or committee procedure. I don't have much to add, along with what my NDP colleague, Mr. Desjardins, has said and what my Liberal colleague, Ms. Shanahan, has said as well. 100% agree with the main motion, but also on the amendment, because we do need to understand and appreciate the precedent that we set when documents like this get leaked. We want to make sure that the rules that which we govern ourselves by are maintained, because ultimately what happens is it is the witnesses that then are hesitant to come and share information with us. It is documents or, that are sensitive documents that we as a committee may or may not agree to, that then become, clearly jeopardize what happens amongst communities in Canada, et cetera. So I will keep it very brief right there, Chair, and I would appreciate if we can go to a vote on the amendment and then the main motion right away. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Appel au règlement, juste.
Appel au règlement, oui.
Point of order, yes. Simply to receive the text of the amendment, because we haven't received it, and I think it would be helpful to have it in both official languages. Certainly. We are now looking for the appropriate wording for that amendment.
Thank you, Chair, and I will be brief. I mean, just briefly addressing the first part, 100% agree. Conservatives would 100% agree to all documents being posted online. Second part, these weren't confidential documents. And so, I'm not sure where Ms. Khalid is coming with her amendment to instigate an investigation into something that couldn't be leaked because there was nothing to leak if it was a public document, as our able clerk has distinguished and identified, is that written response to a question is not considered confidential to this committee. So if all of a sudden we're going to have an investigation into something that wasn't prohibited, it just seems a little strange. So, I mean, I guess have at it. If you want our clerk and chair to waste their time investigating something that was not prohibited, I mean, have at it. But I think it's kind of funny to go that route. So 100% support the main motion, but I think the amendment is irrelevant. These weren't confidential documents. And so the fact that they were provided elsewhere, and frankly, I think we should be more proactively providing these documents broadly. The questions are asked publicly. We ask witnesses questions. Often we find, frankly, is a way I think to kind of avoid answering. Sometimes they try to say, well, we'll get back to you with written response, and sometimes they don't come. So I think that if we have a question that's asked publicly, the responses should be provided as publicly as possible too, so that Canadians who I know are tuned in eagerly watching our committee on a regular basis have all the information. So 100% support putting things online. But to the second part, I mean, nothing was confidential, so there was no leak that happened.
I might, Ms. Clede, you are next to speak. I might suspend just for 3 minutes, so you as a sponsor, just a suspension, just so you as a sponsor of the amendment can just work with the clerk on the precise wording.
Very simple language here.
Okay, you'd like to share it with us?
And B, include or ensure that the committee investigates how these documents were leaked into the public.
I am going to suspend. Ms. Clede, you're going to come speak to the clerk. I want the amendment to be well written, well understood. So I'm going to suspend so we get clarity on this and we overcome any hiccups. Thank you. I'll be back in a few minutes, I hope. bring the meeting back into order. The amendment in both official languages has been sent to your emails. Clerk, why don't you just read it so everyone has it dans les deux langues officielles, s'il vous plaît?
From the top?
Sure, and just clarify which part is the amendment, yes.
Yes, okay. Given that the information contained in the written response from the Treasury Board Secretariat, which was transmitted to committee members on April 15th, 2024, appears to have been disclosed to a Globe and Mail journalist as per the article titled "Three Firms Tied to ArriveCan App Got $1 Billion in Federal Contracts," Ottawa reveals, published May 13th, 2024, that the committee make public on its website the said document sent in the written response from the Treasury Board Secretariat dated April 15th, 2024, and that the committee order the chair to work with the clerk to investigate the divulgation of said documents without prior committee consent, and if appropriate, repercussions be taken.
Okay. Ms. Clede, you have the floor if you have anything to add to that.
I think it is very, very, very well drafted. I'm more than happy to go to a vote so we can conclude this matter as soon as possible.
We'll go as soon as we've exhausted the speaking list. Mr. Desjardins.
All right, thanks, Mr. Chair. My concern with the motion or the amendment, sorry, as written is what if, I'm not saying this is you, the chair was the one to leak this information. Now, in the instance where our chair, who is independent and neutral, much like the Speaker of the House of Commons, were to have engaged in any activity that could benefit a party and to use their discretion to benefit a political party, that would be a concern in this amendment if the same person investigating is the same person who's committed this. And so for those reasons, I'd like the committee to perhaps propose a solution to this obvious predicament.
I've got a speaking list. I'm going to turn to just 1 second. Well, I'm just going to respond to this because I can see your point. I will. I'm going to give you I'm going to tell you up front. For what it's worth, it was not me. You can take that to the bank. But I've tried to conduct myself honorably in the committee, and my word is all I have as we work together. The clerk tells me we are working together on this. I'll tell you my view as well. My view is that the documents are not confidential. My view is that, and I asked the clerk, once the story in the Globe and Mail appeared, that any journalist that contacted the committee should be given the documents. The clerk, in her wisdom, counseled me to just perhaps not do that, so I did not do that. But my view of these documents is written responses to an oral question is not a confidential document. Members, once they receive them, are free to transmit them freely. So not only do I think that there is no infraction here, I will reassert that it was not me. Having said that, the motion is what the amendment is. What it is to the amendment. You're welcome to amendment, but my starting point is that that documents that come to this committee in response to public meetings, it's like the witnesses are not able to give us an answer on the spot, which would be on the public record. They therefore agree to provide a written response. That is, in fact, no different than a public answer, which is on the record and publicly transmitted. And here we had a written response. That is my view, and I believe that for every committee, not just for public accounts. My view is that is, and then members then are free to do what we all do as lawmakers, which is to study them, and if they think there's something there, to work with the information. So that's my view. So just to give you both my perspective and what I think. But I do recognize that my job is to safeguard the committee, and I understand the importance that it is important that for the information to be given to you to decide how to use that going forward. So I've answered your concern, or at least I've addressed it, maybe not answered it. I'll turn to Madame Sinclair-Desgagnés, and then anyone else. And then
je vais rien rajouter, j'aimerais tout simplement...
I have nothing to add. I would simply like to proceed to the vote.
Okay. So we're going to call the vote then on the amendment to the motion. Mr. Chair, I did call the vote, and
I think it's important.
No.
Say.
I called the vote on the amendment, and to maintain discipline, I need to. The vote has been called on the amendment to the motion. Clerk, please proceed.
Amendment of Ms. Khalid for the motion of Madame Sinclair de Gagné carry. Ms. Bradford.
Yes.
Ms. Khalid.
Yes.
Ms. Shanahan.
Yes.
Mr. Sobera.
Yes.
Ms. Yip.
Yes.
Mr. Nader.
Yes.
Mr. Stewart.
Yes.
Ms. Ferrari. Madame Sinclair de Gagné.
Contre?
Mr. Desjardins.
Yes.
9 yeas, 1 nay.
The amendment is passed to the motion. I'm Mr. Stewart, and then I'll recognize Madame Sinclair. Yes, Mr. Stewart.
Allow me to complete the investigation for you. Said journalist reached out to members of Parliament who are not in the committee. They reached out to me. I sought advice if it was public information. I was told it was, and I forwarded the information to a journalist that I've never met before. That's the truth. Well, because everyone was,
You could have asked us. We would have let you.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I told.
I would have let you release the
now
document.
you have it.
If you just...
And the truth is, and this is important, I have no idea who the journalist is. Never met him. Never worked with him. He clearly wanted the information, and I did the due diligence to find out that it was public. And once I found out that it was public, I thought, well, there can't be anything wrong with it, so I sent it to him. That was it. True story.
There you
I
are.
do appreciate that, honestly, Mr. Chair.
All right.
I'm sorry I didn't say it
honorable.
earlier, but I just kind of, where I thought it was public, I didn't think
Yeah.
we would be bothering. So I just, anyway, that's the truth.
Just they left out Natalie.
Okay, order. We are back to Madame Sinclair de Gagné's motion. Is there any more debate on that? Let's call the vote on that, please.
Shall the motion of Madame Sinclair de Gagné as amended carry? Ms. Bradford.
Yes.
Ms. Khalid.
Yes.
Ms. Shanahan.
Yes.
Mr. Sorbera.
Yes.
Ms. Yip.
Yes.
Mr. Nader.
Yes.
Mr. Stewart.
Yes.
Ms. Ferrari. Madame Sinclair de Gagné.
Oui.
Mr. Desjardins.
Yes.
10 yeas.
It is passed. Now, obviously, there still is the matter of the amendment, and the clerk and I will investigate that and report back to the committee. Shannon, is it related to the motion? I'm recognizing, Madame, is it related to this motion?
This motion's passed,
It
Chair.
is
Okay, well then
passed, yes.
I'm going to Madame Sinclair de Gagné, and then I'll come, and then I'll come to you. Yes, Madame Sinclair de Gagné.
Collègue d'avoir.
I will thank my colleagues for having supported the motion, and thank you from the Francophone media that will now access the documents for a topic that I care deeply about and that I've discussed with a number of members here present. Being the RCMP, we had all agreed to invite them to appear here, and I think that in their response they did not take into account what was discussed in our committee, which is really unfortunate. It seems to show that they're not taking us seriously, because we openly discussed the fact that the RCMP would not be answering questions about an investigation, but the RCMP officials could provide us with information about how they go about investigating matters such as the ArriveCAN issue in order to provide us with more information, and in order to provide more information to the population in general that is looking to hear where this is going. All we hear is the RCMP is running their investigation. They're running their investigation, but I think that the public needs to know exactly what they're up to, or at least how they work, and I think that their response shows no regard for the committee and shows no regard for the confidence that the public has in the RCMP in matters of investigations, especially regarding this ArriveCAN saga, the highly questionable behavior of a number of people, businesses and individuals. I think it really is of the highest importance that the RCMP come before us. They are a public service. They are have a public function, and the public wants answers. I think that we should re-invite them in a convincing manner, as we do when we ask ministers to come before us, to have them appear before us so that we will be able to put the questions we wish to them. We all voted yes for the original motion. I think it's important to see to it the RCMP comes to us to really clarify what's happening in the ArriveCAN saga.
Correspondence from the RCMP that they have declined our invitation to appear. Now the discussion is if we wish to pursue this further. Ms. Shanahan, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you so much, Chair. I remember clearly the discussion that we had about the RCMP, and it was my opinion, or I was of the opinion, rather, that, how shall I put this, that their testimony would be really to provide information more than anything else and sort of an educational endeavor. But there's another topic, Chair, which is of serious concern to me. And I feel that it's an important topic for our committee on public accounts, being something we learned today, that there are MPs, members of Parliament, who have included in their expenses partisan costs, partisan expenses, the cost of, let's say, going to Congress, partisan gatherings, using the expression sort of a caucus meeting, but really that not being quite the case, without transparency then regarding the nature of the expenses.
Every MP's office is paid for and supported by taxpayers' dollars, and I think you know that very well, Chair, having yourself served as an advocate for Canadian taxpayers with the Canadian Taxpayers Association. And we learned today that it was the Conservative Party of Canada that was the largest user of taxpayer funds to subsidize the travel, the expenses of their MPs, of family members and staff to effectively attend a Conservative Party convention in Quebec City. And I think it's very disappointing to learn this, especially since the Conservatives pride themselves as being guardians of the public purse, and yet we see this flagrant misuse of parliamentary funds. And we don't have to go very far. It's very apropos that we've been discussing media and media coverage of different issues. And you know, Chair, rightfully so, the public accounts needs to be concerned with the use of taxpayer funds. And learning that Conservative MPs have racked up hundreds of thousands of dollars in expenses to bring their spouses and staff to political events, I think is something that needs it. We're not talking about just a few dollars here. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. And in fact, the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, and I believe, Chair, you were a member or a director or something. It's something that I know you're very proud of, and that you have referred to in your career. That the Taxpayers Federation has called for the money billed to the House of Commons through what is effectively a loophole. Be reimbursed in whole or in part, and taxpayers shouldn't be.
Point of order. I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. I let you go on, Ms. Shanahan. However, I did want us to close the loop on the topic that I brought to the floor with respect to the RCMP. Could we please call the RCMP to testify, and then we can move on to your points. However, I think we should stay on topic. I'd like us to close the loop on the RCMP.
At this point, Ms. Shanahan does have the floor.
Well,
Yes, Mr. Desjardins.
I think it's just a matter of procedure that the topic of the letter was brought up first, and I don't mean to prejudice against what important statements you're making, Ms. Shanahan. Just as a matter of procedure, I believe that the important issue of making sure the RCMP are here present to answer our questions on ArriveCAN and their investigation there is important, and I think maybe all that's required, Chair, is just confirmation on your part that we will send them a letter, in effect, to what we had, as a response to what they had said, and then we can continue on with Ms. Shanahan, if that's okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, I do need a little bit more guidance than that. I'm certainly open to doing that. But at this point, Ms. Shanahan does have the floor. I recognize, Madame Secretary, you were trying to make a helpful suggestion to begin the process, but a motion was not moved. Ms. Shanahan has the floor in committee business, so she will continue with her illuminating concern of tax dollars.
Well, thank you very much, Chair, because rest assured I will be moving a motion. I just wanted to outline where what our concerns are, and I have been looking to speak on this for quite a while. So just to finish with the quote from Franco Terrazzano, Federal Director for the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Taxpayers shouldn't be subsidizing politicians to go to their political conventions. Political parties have a lot of money, politicians have a lot of money, normal working people don't. And so this was wrong, and the money needs to be paid back. He's always a very frank speaker, Mr. Franco Terrazzano. And he's not the only advocate in this area who has spoken out on this, and who is very cognizant that if there is a loophole, that it should not exist. And we heard from Duff Conacher, the co-founder of Democracy Watch, who also called for the loophole to be
Appel au
eliminated.
règlement, Monsieur le Président.
Point of order.
Should never have
Pardon,
been put.
Madame Shanahan.
Pardon me, Madame Shanahan? Madame Sinclair de Gagny. I would like to challenge your decision and come back to the topic of the RCMP.
The clerk on this, normally the challenges come off from the other side of the table. Just 1 second, please. But the chair is being challenged. All right. The clerk will look. It's non-debatable. Anyway. Go ahead, clerk.
Sustained.
Yes.
Ms. Bradford.
Yes.
Ms. Khalid. Ms. Shanahan.
Yes.
Mr. Sorbera.
We.
Ms. Yip. Mr. Nader. Mr. Stewart.
No.
Mr. Vierson. Mr. Vierson, sorry. Ms. Frary, sorry.
No.
Madame Sinclair de Gagny.
Non.
Mr. Desjardins.
No.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeas, 5 nays. You can do whatever you want.
Madame Secretary, you have the floor again.
Thank you, Chair. I simply want to get the committee's opinion.
On a
Allez-y,
entendu
pardon,
M. Desjardins.
excuse-moi.
Pardon, on a entendu.
We heard Mr. Desjardins on the subject. I'd like to know what my colleagues feel. I would like us to
Motion forward if you want this to continue. I advise you to put a motion forward. If
D'accord, je
you,
vais déposer une.
Very well, then. I would like to table a motion to call and insist, in fact, firmly that the RCMP come and explain itself to the committee with respect to its procedures, its investigation powers. And I think we can use the verbatim of the motion that I had tabled. But essentially, I want to call on the RCMP to explain itself to this committee.
is,
You want the,
oh, well,
or is it understood?
no, I think you better send the language around to be safe and by the books. And I have on the list Ms. Khalid and then Mr. Nader. Ms. Khalid, are you ready to speak to it now, or would you prefer to see the text of the motion?
I would prefer to see the text, Chair.
Okay, no, that's fine. As you're right, I'm going to suspend for three to 4 minutes, depending on how long it takes. So just bear with us. We'll come back very shortly.
to come in here to talk about an open investigation, knowing full well beforehand that they cannot answer any questions on the public dollar or on an open investigation, then either we're grandstanding on what is an issue and trying to take political points for whatever they may be worth, or we're just not understanding parliamentary procedure. And I think I would credit all of the colleagues at this table to understand what parliamentary procedure is. And at this point in time, I feel that this is a waste of resources for us, knowing full well what the RCMP is going to come and say about an open investigation and their inability to answer any questions about it, for them to have to come sit here and say again and again and again, can't answer, can't answer, can't answer, but knowing that after the investigation is over, we can have a fulsome discussion on all of this. We can ask those questions. We can talk about procedure. We can talk about fixing how things are done, how procurement happens, etc. How do we justify this? How do we justify political grandstanding right now? And so, yes, I 100% agree. The RCMP should be coming to this committee to talk to us about how we can work to make sure that we are holding the public purse in the safety that it should be held in. That's the whole purpose of what our committee is. But knowing beforehand that the RCMP is not going to be able to come and answer the questions that we want them to answer, and still grandstanding still, to me, I find that to be a little bit disingenuous, Chair. Again, I have no opposition to the RCMP coming to this committee. I have no opposition to them coming and helping us understand how we can improve. But knowing full well that they cannot answer any questions and still inviting them anyway while there's an open investigation going on, I'm really not sure what we're trying to achieve here, Chair. I'll stop there.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Nader.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chair, and I'll be brief. I mean, I don't see any challenges in simply reissuing an invitation to our friends at the RCMP. These are law enforcement professionals. They know what they're doing. They know which questions they can answer and which questions they can't answer. And if it would, reassure folks, there's no problem with having a meeting, as has been done in other committees, where part of it is in camera and part of it is in public. There's a lot of questions out there, and I think the RCMP will answer what's viable for them to answer, and decline to answer in public what they can answer if it's an ongoing investigation. But I think there's a lot of questions, and so from our perspective, I don't see any concerns with reissuing a letter to invite the RCMP. We're not sending the Sergeant of Arms after them to compel them to come here. We're simply sending a letter to re-invite them. So I would say we support the motion and go from there. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I am keeping a list, and I have 4 members on it. Oui, Madame Sécla Desgagnés, à votre tour, s'il vous plaît.
I find it unfortunate that we're debating the original motion, because the arguments that you're producing are the same that we heard initially, saying that there's no point. However, the RCMP will be able to say if yes or no, it can answer some of our questions. And a number of people, the people that we represent, are wondering how an RCMP investigation works. They're looking for details, but of course we won't be asking details since we won't get an answer. However, it's up to us to ask intelligent questions and make good use of our time. So I don't see why we can't just invite them. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And like my colleagues from the Conservatives in the Bloc, I agree that it's a matter of principle, particularly as Parliament requires answers, to the point Ms. Khalid made about if the RCMP find it incumbent upon themselves to be unable to answer. I believe it's appropriate for them to be able to make that statement to a member who's asking the question. It's important to know that we are not administrators in the same purpose for Section 91 of the Constitution Act, which doesn't prescribe that we're making decisions for the purpose of the administration of government here. We're working through a parliament that demands accountability. In this particular instance, the RCMP is involved in this work, and should they be unable to answer a question from a member, they can simply say that. The point of frustration I have, Chair, is that the RCMP could be making the very same arguments or not making the arguments made by the Liberals. And so I think it doesn't do any harm to an investigation. Should we ask questions about their investigation, and should they respond by saying they can't respond because of that investigation? If that's ultimately what they say, then that will be their submission for our report. But to decline the opportunity for the RCMP to even make mention of the process or even their challenges, or if they want to submit nothing, that option is not present if this committee can vote in favor of that opportunity. And so, Chair, I feel this is my final remarks on this, and I would hope that we have unanimous consent to do this, and I would call for a vote as soon as possible.
Thank you very much. Ms. Shanahan, you have the floor, please.
Well, thank you, Chair. And I just wanted to point out, but I do have something to say on this motion, that I'd like the clerk to check the rules and procedures, Chapter 20. I believe there's something about when there is a challenge to the chair and there's equal voices of members, that the chair's ruling be sustained. So, you know, I'm being a good sport about this, but you know, I think it's highly unusual for a chair to vote against his own ruling, and I'd like to see that further investigated. But I do have something that I want to say about this. This motion that's here before us, because I find it, I'm sorry, very disingenuous. We've discussed this before, and I think that we need to be mindful as members of Parliament to protect the integrity and of the investigation. I don't think anyone wants to see the investigation compromised, and so I propose the following amendment. And that would be, I think we have to delete the last line, within 3 weeks of this motion, to, in order to protect the integrity of the investigation, that the RCMP appear after the investigation is concluded.
I'm going to ask you to send that to the clerk right away. I'm going to suspend for 1 minute. The clerk is merely a mortal, a super mortal like the rest like this, but I'm going to have you send that because she's presently occupied. I'm going to suspend just for a minute. 3 minutes. Bringing the meeting back into session. Ms. Shanahan, we have received your amendment and we've sent it out to all the members. You have the floor again.
Thank you, Chair. And again, in keeping with the spirit of, I think we have been open to hearing testimony from the RCMP, but the very last thing that we want to do, and I don't think there's any member here that wants to interfere with the investigation, we can just see a scenario where the alleged accused and are in court and they're going to point to information that was given by the RCMP out of turn. I'm not a lawyer myself, but I can imagine somebody would have a field day with that kind of public testimony. And I believe, I don't have the original letter offhand, but that was something that we did seek to ensure was respected with the RCMP, that we acknowledge that they have their job to do. It's important to do, and so that is why I'm putting forward this amendment, because our report won't be done. Once the investigation is completed, the RCMP can come and see us. We can certainly continue that part of the work at that time. We have other reports and studies and so on that have been going on for months, if not years. So I don't think it's a question of urgency in this matter. So I'll leave it there, Chair.
I have Ms. Khalid. I also have. I don't want to get. I also have information from the law clerk that I want to flag. And it could take us down another path, which is to hear from him. I believe there's it doesn't rule your amendment out of order, far from it, but I believe there's an issue that the amendment, when the investigation is over, if charges are laid, then of course it goes before the courts, and I'm not sure where that leaves us in terms of hearing from the RCMP. I'm just going to say that, Ms. Khalid, you have the floor. On the amendment to the motion.
Chair, I support this amendment, and I don't have much more to say than that. Let's go to a vote.
Well, I'm afraid there is still a speaking list, so we will get there. Well, I've got two now. Mr. Nader, you're up. Okay, hold on. Mr. Nader, and then.
Well, I won't be too long on this, other than say, the amendment just basically is pushing off an appearance till who knows when. It seems rather. I believe Ms. Shanahan was being rather rude to my friend Natalie Sinclair de Gagné in saying that she was being disingenuous earlier. Well, I think.
I have a point of order. Yes.
Yeah, don't impugn. Yeah, don't impugn motives. Nous sommes des amis. Say so.
Okay.
We're friends.
Thank you, Chair. Always unfortunate when Ms. Shanahan feels the need to interrupt everyone at this committee, but she does that regularly. But
now everyone knows point of orders. I hear them from both sides. Happy to do so, Mr. Ned. I'd ask you to return to the amendment to the motion, please.
So very, very briefly, the impact of this amendment is to ensure that we don't hear from this witness, and that we will be long delayed from the pertinency of this matter by the time we would see the RCMP before this committee. So I do not support the amendment, and we'd be voting against it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Just before I go to Ms. Ferrari, Mr. Dizzy, was your hand up, or were you kind of just waving for? I wasn't.
I'm just calling for a vote.
Okay, that's fine. I do have you down, Ms. Clete. But previously I saw that from Mr. Dizzy, but I thought it might be just looking to move things along. Ms. Ferrer, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for having me to Public Accounts. It's obviously my first time here, and just chiming in as I see this, because obviously I sit on two other committees. and one of the big issues, obviously, is ArriveCan and the ongoing investigation and the historical appearance, obviously, before the bar of GC Strategies CEO. So I guess what I'm hearing, and I don't understand from the perspective of the Liberals today, is why you wouldn't want, and I hear their reasoning, but it doesn't really make sense. If we're here to work for the people, why we wouldn't want to have an update from the RCMP. This is probably one of the biggest scandals that's ever happened in certainly my time, of, you know, an app that was supposed to cost, what was it, $80,000, it cost $60 million, first time in over 110 years where somebody was called before the bar. This obviously is something that is very important to Canadians, and I can't see why we wouldn't want this to happen. And so that would be my 2 cents as somebody who's just coming from the outside, that this is probably one of the biggest issues that we've seen in Canadian history. So obviously, I'll be brief, I guess. That's it. It just doesn't make any sense to me why you wouldn't want the RCMP to give an update to people and see where it's at. The other piece to this that I think is really important, it is taxpayers' money, and that's a really big issue when you have a cost of living crisis and people can't afford to live and they're using food banks and they have nowhere to live and you have tent cities and all of those things. But what that app did to people psychologically, you know, when they went to hotel quarantines, and it caused a lot of psychological stress and divide in our country and among people that they're still healing from. And so I guess it just feels like it is really important to the people watching at home who we work for and who we were elected to. So I would just like to see this motion pass at the RCMP come before summer session so they get that update. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Khalid, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll address this very, very quickly. A number of points here that have been raised by my colleagues. First and foremost, nobody is saying that the RCMP should not come here to this committee to be held accountable for and to help us understand how this investigation has been ongoing. What we're trying to say with this amendment is that, look, the RCMP sent us a letter. We are respecting their jurisdiction, their limitations. And if our committee genuinely wants answers rather than grandstanding, then we do need to delay when they come in. Because if we have them in within this week while the investigation is still ongoing, we are not going to get answers as members of this committee want. So to me, on a practical basis, it makes no sense whatsoever for us to haul them in only to have them say again and again, we can't answer this question, we can't answer this question, we can't answer this question, all because there is active, ongoing investigation, which we all want to be concluded. And none of us should be wanting to politicize an independent investigation by the RCMP. And that is why we are introducing this amendment. And I'm really hoping that we can go to a vote, Chair.
And we can. Clerk, call the vote on the amendment to the motion, please.
Shall the amendment of Ms. Shanahan to the motion of Madame Saint-Clair Desgagnés carry? Ms. Bradford?
Yes.
Ms. Khalid?
Yes.
Ms. Shanahan?
Yes.
Mr. Sobrera?
Yes.
Ms. Yip?
Yes.
Mr. Nader?
No.
Mr. Stewart?
No.
Ms. Ferrari?
No.
Madame Saint-Clair Desgagnés?
No.
Mr. Desjardins?
No.
5 yeas, 5 nays.
The amendment is defeated. We now return to the motion at hand as tabled by Madame Saint-Clair Desgagnés. Call the vote on that, please. Clerk.
Shall the motion of Madame Saint-Clair Desgagnés carry? Ms. Bradford?
No.
Ms. Khalid?
No.
Ms. Shanahan?
No.
Mr. Sorbera?
No.
Ms. Yip?
No.
Mr. Nader?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yeah, yes.
Ms. Ferrari?
Yes.
Madame Saint-Clair Desgagnés?
Oui.
Mr. Desjardins?
Oui.
5 yeas, 5 nays.
The motion is passed. Ms. Shanahan, you have the floor.
Chair, and I'm glad that we're able to get back to the motion that I wish to propose here. I think members heard my preamble and the concern that I have. about this flagrant disregard for public funds exercised by Pierre Poilievre's Conservative Party. These members of Parliament who like to talk a good talk, but when it comes to walking the walk, it's a different story. So I move the following motion, that the committee immediately conducts a study into the flagrant disregard for public funds exercised by Pierre Poilievre's Conservative Party of Canada Member of Parliament, who expensed their travel costs, hotels, and per diems to travel to Quebec City for the Conservative Party of Canada Partisan Convention in September 2023 as a matter of public interest and report its findings to the House. Et je l'ai en français aussi, et des copies pour tout le monde.
I have the wording in French, and I have copies for everyone, which I will now distribute.
Just, Shannon, did you send it electronically? If you didn't, that's fine. But I'm just, did you send a copy electronically? You don't need to, but I'm wondering if you did, we'd send it out. But that's I just so we're not looking for it.
I'll hand it over. I'll give it to them.
Oh, I already gave it to them. This is for me.
John, I'm just making sure it's equalized.
As I said, I'm the ref of the European Football League. Okay, I have a speaking list already. Everyone has the motion. We're going to get going here. Yes, Ms. Ferrer, you have the floor, please.
Oh, thank you so much. So there's been a motion put forward again. I'm new to public accounts, so this is interesting to me that a motion has been put forward by a Liberal member worried about taxpayers' money, and it's interesting, to put it mildly, after we were just trying to get the RCMP to testify here, and the Liberal did not want that before committee, about an app that we know cost at least $60 million, but more. And this motion that the committee immediately conduct a study into the flagrant disregard for public funds exercised by Conservative Party of Canada members of Parliament. So I guess my question would be, is this member, if she's really serious here, because she said talk the talk, walk the walk. So I was hoping we could add a couple of amendments, obviously, to the Prime Minister's $6,000 a night mystery, or $6,000 a night stay in London, as well as his very extravagant trip to Jamaica that cost taxpayers, I'm not sure how much that was, but I mean, if we're going to walk the walk and we're going to talk about being very mindful of taxpayers' money, I think we should be adding that into this study. And Tofino, thank you so much to my NDP colleague here. Thank you. I think that we should be adding a few things here if we're going to be doing this, because I think that would only be fair if we're going to be talking about spending taxpayers' money. I think there's also like a green slush fund if we wanted to do that on taxpayers' money. I mean, there's that $4.5 billion mental health transfer that never happened, and then you have the money that was spent on to reduce chronic homelessness that hasn't been spent. Should we go on and on here, Chair, on terms of misuse of taxpayers' money? Right now, we're spending more on servicing the debt in this country because of the Prime Minister's mismanagement of taxpayers' money than we are on health care. So I'm just, if the Liberal member is truly serious about this, that would be a really great thing, because I think absolutely, I think we absolutely as elected members of Parliament want to ensure that the money is accounted for and is being fiscally spent. So I think there's a lot of things we could add to this motion, and I'm curious to see if the member opposite is open to that, if she really wants to walk the walk. And obviously, let's throw in Arrive Scam. Because again, $60 million, that's being low of what is expected when it was supposed to cost $80,000. So thank you.
Quite a long speaking list.
Thank you, Chair. And a very, very curious motion, I might say, and somewhat surprising, because just last week, the Liberals filibustered a meeting on Arrive Scam for about 45 minutes to an hour to avoid hearing from witnesses, all for the supposed intent of working out a work plan that this committee had agreed to and that the chair had agreed to and had put things into place. So it's rather curious, comical, if it wasn't so serious, that now all of a sudden Ms. Shanahan, the Liberal caucus National Caucus chair, has decided to put forward such a motion about another opposition party's attendance at a National Caucus meeting. Especially interesting, Ms. Shanahan moved this motion, Liberal Caucus chair. Interesting about her $5,149.02 expense for regional or national caucus meetings in Whitehorse. So that was $5,149. Another $1,257 for Rocky Harbor, Newfoundland. So I see Ms. Shanahan is
Okay.
Rocky.
Order.
Just
Just one second.
heckled, Mr.
Yes, just
Chair.
one
It's,
second, Mr. Nader. Again, we have a nice long list, and I will add people to it. You have the floor again, Mr. Nader.
I do have a point of
Oh,
order.
pardon me. I thought you were. Pardon me. Yes, Madame Khalid.
Thank you. I would encourage our members to talk on the relevance. Like, in fact, members on the Conservative side have listed out things that have been litigated in committees, front, back, center, all of it. What this specific motion is asking for is brand spanking new. It is something that has not been discussed, and I think that members should stick to this, because at the end of the day, all parliamentarians are accountable.
That is true. I'm going to turn things over to Mr. Nader. You seem to be objecting to him tying it to the national national caucus, and I'm sure Mr. Nader is going to get to the point that there was a national caucus meeting in Quebec. Do you have a point of order, Mr. Desjardins, or are you?
Not a point of order.
Okay,
just
then I'll.
speaking list.
Very good, Mr. Nader, you have the floor, please.
Sorry, am I on the speaking list, Chair? Sorry. Okay.
You are now.
Perfect. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Where I was before I was interrupted by points of order from the Liberals was articulating that Ms. Shanahan, as National Caucus Chair, did expense significant amounts of money to attend caucus meetings. I would note further that the members' bylaw, which is a matter that falls under BOI, the Board of Internal Economy, is the one that would be responsible for this. I see Ms. Shanahan wants to distract from the government's disastrous Arrive Scam ineptitude, where an app that should have cost a few $100,000 is ballooned to $60 million of taxpayer dollars, an RCMP investigation. So I can see why she wants to distract from that. But the fact is that the board rules, the members' bylaws permit members to attend national caucus meetings, which are typically all-day events, typically held at different points in time. We call them caucus retreats, we call them caucus meetings, but they are caucus matters. As some colleagues may know, may not know, that in a past life, I have been working on a long delayed PhD dissertation on caucus meetings, and so I do have some familiarity with caucus meetings from all parties, frankly, from a number of decades gone by. And so I would point out, first of all, that this is a matter that is, is there. It's members attend caucus meetings. That's part of our parliamentary functions. And frankly, if we look at past speakers' rulings, we've actually seen various speakers, including Mr. Speaker Regan, a Liberal speaker, not that it matters, but ruling on occasion in two parliaments ago that caucus meetings do indeed constitute a part of parliamentary functions. And so to all of a sudden the Liberals think that all of a sudden we're going to have some kind of investigation into the meetings of caucuses, it seems rather interesting, rather, again, comical given the timing that they want to do this. But obviously there's caucus meetings. They're held at various points in time. I know the Liberals enjoyed a wonderful caucus meeting in St. Andrews by the Sea. Perhaps Mr. Stewart can tell us about that lovely location. But they do happen at various points in the country, various locations, and matters happen. We follow the members' procedural bylaws that provide clarity and certainty. And expenses that are eligible are one thing, and expenses that aren't permitted. So the bylaw clearly states that national caucus meetings, regional caucus meetings are permitted, as we know from Ms. Shanahan's own expense claims about her attendance at various matters. So I really don't know what this is, especially since this is not an issue for public accounts. This is a Board of Internal Economy issue. But once again, what we're seeing here is a Liberal attempt to cover up. A Liberal attempt to cover up the malfeasance that we've seen with the Arrive can. And every meeting we've seen in these last few weeks, every time we see new allegations from whether it's Aaron O'Gorman as the current president or John Ozowski as the former president of the CBSA, a flagrant disregard for taxpayer funds, a complete disregard. We saw preferential...
Point of order, Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, just relevance to the motion, and I just want to point out that Mr. Nader expensing of $2,117 for
that's
a
not a point of order.
convention.
You're splitting. Mr. Nader, you have the floor. If you could just
not that it's
maintain on
relevant,
point.
Mr. Chair, but if Ms. Shanahan actually looked at that, she would notice that I flew in the night before the caucus meeting and left the next day after the caucus meeting. Not that she would want to worry about details like that, but obviously she's never let facts get in the way of a good partisan job. But that's for her to live with, and not for me. My expenses are all a matter of the public record, and I am more than happy to defend attending caucus meetings where we are committed as a Conservative caucus to, axing the tax, building the homes, fixing the budget, and stopping the crime. That's what we're focused on. We're not focused on the Liberal cover-up that we're seeing, not only with this motion, but with their complete and utter disregard for the findings of the Auditor General, and every time they try to disrupt a meeting. So, Ms. Shanahan calls relevance. Well, this is relevant. This is relevant because this is being used by the Liberal members on this committee, by the Liberal National Caucus chair, to try to distract and change the subject matter for the upcoming meetings, especially after they made such a silly, comical display last week to reinforce what the chair had already decided. So I think this is nothing more than a Liberal attempt to distract away from the real matter, which is, of course, the Arrive scam. And I will leave my comments there, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Bradford, I believe you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think we should clarify that the problem arises when certain parties have a habit of pairing up a caucus meeting with a political convention. That's where the difficulty arises. The Liberal Party hasn't done that since prior to the 2014 convention held in Montreal. We don't pair caucus meetings with conventions. So I'm not sure if Mr. Nader, if he didn't attend that Conservative convention that was held in conjunction with the caucus meeting in Quebec City in September of 2023. I suspect he did attend the convention since he was there. And so it turns out that 3 members that are here today, Mr. Nader, it was $2,117.18. Ms. Ferrari was $3,893.24, and Mr. Williamson was $1,846.81. So these 3 members alone that are sitting here today represent $8,367.11 attending a political convention that were held in conjunction with caucus. And that is not the intention of the use of the House of Commons money. It's not to be used for political purposes at all. And I'd like to draw your attention to Genevieve Tellier, a professor of political studies at the University of Ottawa, said Parliament makes a distinction between the parliamentary and the political activities of MPs for a reason. But the House of Commons is also free to adopt its own rules. Quote, the decision is a bit surprising for me because I would have thought that there may be other priorities, other needs within Parliament that need funding, but they don't have the funding to do so, she said. Tellier also questioned why Conservative MPs are billing the House of Commons for travel to a party convention, including by designated travelers, when the party's coffers are well stocked. Designated travelers would be like people's spouses, etc. So she felt that it would be better example for them to set the example and say that we don't go that way. We don't authorize that type of spending, she said. They have the money anyway to pay for the travel of people that they want for the convention from party funds. So I'm making the point that, you know, the Conservatives, you know, did do this at that convention as an example. And so that's why I believe Ms. Shanahan is bringing forward this motion today for us to consider that we should have a look at this because it is a misuse of money that is being kind of directed to partisan events because they're being held in conjunction with the caucus and using that caucus excuse to get the travel expenses for themselves and their designated travelers to get to the political convention.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sabero, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I think this is the first opportunity I've had to engage in the debate today at the committee. When I look at my colleague Ms. Shanahan's motion with regards to the matter at hand and the sentiment expressed in the flagrant disregard for public funds exercised by Pierre Poilievre's Conservative Party of Canada and its members of Parliament, Chair, it goes to the heart of the matter where we as parliamentarians have responsibilities when we travel to events. We travel outside our constituency offices. In this case here, you know, when we members have caucus meetings, we travel to those caucus meetings at wherever point they're scheduled in across this beautiful country. We're all blessed to call home. But they're not conventions. They're not political conventions where then you can tack on an extra day or two here or there. And where I grew up in northern British Columbia, this is playing loosey-goosey with the rules and how you interpret them. And I know Mr. Stewart's from New Brunswick, if I remember correctly, and my sister-in-law's from that area. And growing up in northern BC, you know, this is the type of thing that you try to get away with something until you're kind of caught with your hand in the cookie jar in terms of how you've interpreted the rules. And I must admit, looking at this, you know, I've gone to political conventions since 1988, I believe was my first one as a private citizen, and now for the last 9 years as an elected official. And when you go to political conventions, those are paid by your own funds, or they're paid for through a process through your electoral district association, your EDA. And in no way have we, gone to a political convention and then tacked on a day and said, well, I'm going to bring individuals with me and I'm going to charge back to ultimately the taxpayers of Canada. I think that is wrong. Here, what is referenced in my colleague Ms. Shanahan's motion with regards to the Quebec City Convention, it was a full-fledged political convention. And then to say, well, I'm going to have a day of caucus meetings or so forth and then charge back on that is I think, to be blunt, very unacceptable. The issue at hand, they should be separate. They should be fully separate. There should be no, if I'm looking at a Venn diagram, the circles should not cross in any matter at all. And in this time they were. So somebody interpreted the rules and said, hey, I think we can get away with this. And now we're saying, wait a second, I think that's actually wrong. I think that, well, it may be within the rules, but it's actually does not pass the smell test. And I think as parliamentarians, we're all here to do better and to do the best we can for our constituents and the taxpayers and voters of this country. I think in this regard, it's not putting the matter of the public interest at heart. It's not being what I would say the best that we can all be as parliamentarians, Chair. And, when I read these stories as reported by the media, I was actually thinking about this because I was thinking, geez, how would that work? And why would they do that? And I thought, oh, geez, they went to a political convention and they tacked on an extra day and then charged it back to the government of Canada or their MOBs. And I think that there needs to be that separation. I fully think there needs to be separation. Now, as a parliamentarian, I like to learn and I like to always do what I can for my constituents and do better. And I think we all as parliamentarians read the rules that we're governed under, and we all act accordingly. I think we act accordingly to the best of our ability, and so forth. But I think in this case here, somebody thought, I think we can do this. It may not pass the smell test. I may not be able to explain it, but geez, I think I can try to get away with it. And that's not right. That's not the way we'd raise our children. I don't think most certainly that's not the way I'm going to raise my kids. And in fact, to all the political conventions we've gone to and all my caucus meetings, I can actually flatly say that I've never, we have made it a plan with my wife and I not to bring our family members to that, to keep them separate, always. We don't like to conflate that matter. If even on occurrences when folks come visit me in Ottawa, we actually pay our own expenses because I think that's the right thing to do. And I think we have those dependent traveler points and stuff like that. That's fine. People have a right to do that. I see people bring their spouses up, their partners, and so forth on flights. We all choose what we want to do as parliamentarians and how we wish to act and how we wish to comport ourselves. That's that's within our purview, and I'm not here to judge other folks. At the same time, we all represent our constituents and the taxpayers within those constituents. I think on this case here, the flagrant disregard, again, the flagrant disregard for public funds, it's I would say it's unfortunate because I think folks could have done better on this front, and I think the separation between a party convention, a party political convention, and then claiming some sort of caucus meetings are tacked on, and then claiming expenses in between back to your MOB is I think wrong, unfortunately, and much to the chagrin because I do when I read that story, I think there were a lot of well-intentioned MPs that looked at that and that made that practice. But I think when you take a step back, it's probably not the most prudent way of managing things. So I'm going to stop there. I've kind of said my piece on this front. I just think we need to be stewards of the till, Chair. And I know, Chair, from your background, I think you were the president of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, or to some extent, and if I'm wrong, you please correct me. And you've always been one that wants to act in the best interest of taxpayers in your province of New Brunswick and across the country, Chair Williamson. And I'm fully on that bent as on myself with the background I bring to Parliament and where I see things. So with that, I'd like to thank Ms. Shanahan for bringing forward this motion. I think it is a great motion, and I hope we have a chance to continue the debate along with it and see where we go from there and the will of the committee on what we wish to do with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A few things I wanted to add. Mr. Sorbera, in September 2022, in St. John, New Brunswick, spent $2,330.62. And in Whitehorse, Madame or Miss Shanahan spent, I believe, exceeding $5,000. I also wanted to raise something else here, too, Mr. Chair. I think it's important. The Liberal Party's caucus retreat in New Brunswick in 2022 cost taxpayers $428,000 and change. Some of it billed to the House of Commons and some expenses for staffers in ministers' offices, and the Prime Minister's office billed to those offices. Also, the figures included $43,292 in expenses for MPs designated travelers. I also wanted to bring mention to the Prime Minister's trip to, I believe it was Montana, and before they added the RCMP costs and the police detail that would travel with the Prime Minister, I believe it exceeded $400,000. It could have been $500,000, but in my mind it's at least $400,000. So I think if we're going to throw stones, we should understand what we've done ourselves. At the same point, I mean, listen, we've been dealing with $1 billion slush fund and $60-some million ArriveCam scandal, where one contractor got $20 million. And I think that it's quite rich that the Liberal Party could spend that much in St. Andrews by the Sea, I believe, a very beautiful part of New Brunswick. And, but that's $400,000. And I find it very interesting. I mean, considering there was a National Caucus meeting with the weekend that's being discussed here before the committee. So I think it's very interesting that the Liberals would actually go this route, judging by their own record. That is perhaps the strangest aspect of this meeting here today. The Liberals' record on spending on hotel costs and what's being billed to the taxpayer has been on occasion so alarming that it's spent numerous days on the front page. I think that all of Canada has been quite perplexed by the idea of a $90,000 Jamaican vacation, a $500,000 Montana vacation, a $400,000 caucus retreat in New Brunswick, Canada, my backyard, or close to it at least, in St. Andrews. I think the Liberal record is shocking on so many levels that as a member of this committee, I'm kind of perplexed that we're even having this discussion. I mean, any member of this committee from any party has the right to put a motion. And I don't mean to be disrespectful to that part, because it is the right of a member. I'm just shocked that the Liberal Party's direction would go there, of all places, because their own record has been so abysmal that we've just seen it so often that I think, Mr. Chair, I think it'd be fair to say that the taxpayer in general has a legitimate fatigue with this sort of discussion. And I don't think they expect any different from the governing party, from the Liberal Party of Canada. So I think maybe today, maybe this motion is some sort of attempt to change the channel on perhaps one of their very own worst attributes as a party. And I think if you let's look at these figures again. Let's just think about them. Mr. Sorbera, who, obviously I respect, he's definitely a good guy. I've met him a few different times. But, I mean, here's a guy that's got a $2,330 charge in New Brunswick, and some of the charges we're dealing with today are $1,000 less than that. And I find that very, very strange.
I have a point of order. Just 1 second, Mr. Stewart. Yes, Ms. Khalid.
I'm sorry, perhaps it's more of a point of clarification. I'm just seeing who is on the speakers list so far and where I am on that list, Chair. And how
I
long
will.
we have
I'll
resources
update
for.
that after Mr. Stewart's done.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Like I say, I think there's a general fatigue, and I think sometimes the governing members are fatigued themselves because they're dealing with so many monetary issues, so many scandalous issues where the taxpayer is fatigued by it. And I think maybe this is just some sort of lame attempt to save a little bit of face for once in the last 9 years. And I think if the Prime Minister is going to spend 90 grand in Jamaica and $6,000 hotel rooms in England and $500,000 vacation in Montana, and I think a few $100,000 again in Tofino, I know that I'm missing significant events that would have cost significant and substantial amounts of money, public money. But I think at the same time, Mr. Chair, I find, I could talk about the barn
Order.
here. I actually forgot, Mr. Chair, and thankfully...
Now, Mr. Stewart, the barn is not quite relevant to the motion. Order.
Point of order, Chair. Point of
order.
There is a wide latitude for
Mr.
relevance.
Genuis, calm down.
Wide latitude.
Mr.
Point of
Chair.
order, Chair.
Yes,
I would
Ms. Gilly.
still like an answer to my question if
Yes.
that's okay.
No, okay.
I'm so
okay, look, there is a motion before the committee. Mr. Stewart has the floor.
I think
Yes.
to my colleague's point, and I mean I get it. Like no member of Parliament has expensed a few $1,000s to go stay at the barn at the National Capital Commission's property, but that's another $8 million racket that Liberal members have had to answer to. It may seem small to some, but today we're talking about much bigger amounts of money, Mr. Chair. I mean, we're talking about a $500,000 trip to Montana. Maybe they went to Yellowstone. We forgot to look into that part. And a $90,000 Jamaican vacation and a $428,258 taxpayer-funded Liberal Party caucus retreat in New Brunswick, in St. Andrews by the Sea. Very beautiful place in Canada completely, but still a substantial amount of money. And I think, Mr. Chair, when I read this motion, I read it as, I'm just going to say it. I've done a little bit of rambling here. I'm a little bit tired today. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, if I've rambled a bit. But I'm just going to cut to the chase. This is going to be really important. This is just simply a deflection. What is it a deflection from? Well, they don't want
Point of
the
order,
RCMP
Chair.
here until after.
Is this just filibustering?
Point of order. Miss Brenda Shanahan wasn't acknowledged on her point of order.
Well, no, we have a
If you say
long
point of order, you have to be
speaking list.
acknowledged.
Unless
You can't just say point of order and start talking, can you?
Ms. Shanahan,
We just all gonna
Ms.
talk
Shannon,
over each
half
other.
the
Is
names
that how
on
it
this
works,
list
Mr.
are
Garnett?
government.
You don't have the
We can
floor.
do exactly the same thing,
You don't
sir.
have the floor.
Order.
Pardon me?
Okay. Thank you, Mr.
Point of order. What are you
Mr. Desjardins.
implying,
I
Blake?
have a legitimate point of order. The interpreters are real people here,
Yes.
and I don't think we should just be
Thank you.
slamming down the.
Thank you. That is true. Mr. Stewart?
See what I'm talking about? If everybody just noticed, Mr. Chair, that was another deflection. Because this is very, very strange behavior from a government that has a track record of spending public money like there's no tomorrow and putting it on the backs of the taxpayers. And I think right out of the gate, the previous member from the Liberal Party that spoke ahead of me, his own retreat in New Brunswick cost $1,000 more than some of the ones we're talking about. I mean, this is the kind of strange behavior that you see when there's a very fatigued government at play. And I think that, Mr. Chair, I think it's very strange behavior because I guess either they're trying to change the channel or they really believe that somehow the members of other parties spent more than they did, which is totally impossible. Or maybe they could change the channel and the public
Point of
would then
order,
see
Mr.
that
Chair?
potentially.
Yes, Ms. Khalid.
I'd just like to know why we have additional Conservative members that are not part of our permanent committee and are yet coming in here and disrupting the committee as things are progressing. I think we all have to listen to
Same point.
what our members are saying.
Same point.
So I'm trying to understand what's happening here, Chair.
On the same point, Mr. Nader?
Thank you, Chair, and I would encourage Ms. Khalid to review the associate membership of this committee, and she will realize, if she were to do that, that every member who is currently in this committee room right now is either a member or an associate member of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts. So to try to imply that a member of this committee or an associate member shouldn't be at a Public Accounts committee, so I'm quite concerned about her denying the opportunity for parliamentarians to play their role and attend meetings to which they are entitled as parliamentarians to attend.
Thank
Sorry,
you. Yes.
On the
that
same
of order,
point, Chair.
I will,
Okay.
no,
Whoa,
Chair.
Miss
I have the floor.
Miss
I have the
Khalid
floor.
Miss Khalid has a point of order on the same
Thank you,
point.
Chair, and I appreciate Mr. Nader's jabs at me. However, my question was, why are there additional members beyond what our permanent members are on this committee, and why are they disrupting the conversation that is happening in this committee? And I don't think that Mr. Nader, in as much as he would have loved to defend his members here, really addressed my points, and I think that is for you, Chair, to address as to why are members being unruly on this committee right now that are not permanent members on this committee.
Thank you. So, two answers to your point. So, as my understanding is, members of the House of Commons are free to come into committee meetings and take a seat, and in some circumstances participate if they're rotated in and out, or members can agree to hear from a member, as we've done with the Green Party, for example. On your second point, I would urge members from all sides to restrain their comments, allow the speaker who has the floor to be heard, so we can also move on from one to the next. The interruptions, of course, do tend to both cause and allow members to go on longer than perhaps anticipated, and as well, the interpreters do not need to hear the excess noise. So I would ask members. I'll take this moment actually, since I do have the floor. And if I've missed anyone, let me know. But I have up next Mr. Desjardins, then Ms. Shanahan, Mr. Nader, Ms. Yip, Ms. Ferrari, Ms. Khalid, and then Mr. Genuis. Did I miss anyone? No. So that is where we're at. Mr. Stewart, you have the floor.
Chair, I just had a point of order.
Point of order, yes, Mr. Genuis.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if Ms. Khalid's point of order was actually motivated by her own guilty conscience, because I know
Mr. Genuis, you're on.
That was maybe unnecessary
Mr.
preamble,
Genuis,
but
I'm
it
going to
was.
ask you to cite the point of order you are referencing. Then,
well,
you're a schooled man. You know the rules better than
my
anyone.
understanding
Yes,
is that a
Mr.
point
Genuis,
of order.
Mr. Genuis,
I'll defer to you, Chair.
Thank you.
But
very
the point
much.
is that she doesn't.
You said
she
you
just-
deferred to me.
Okay.
Please turn the microphone off. I want to hear from Mr. Stewart, please. Mr. Genuis, you're down on the list.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, that was, once again, that was a significant number of deflections that happened. But they're normal in the committee. You know, and I think if I could go back to this regular motion here, Mrs. Shanahan neglected to admit that she spent $5,000 in Whitehorse at the Liberal Caucus retreat in 2023, and Mr. Sorbera neglected to notice that he spent $2,330.62 in New Brunswick in September of 2022. That in itself is nearly $8,000. And you know, Mr. Chair, if you take Montana and St. Andrews, New Brunswick, and add them together, those were $1 million. Just two. You guys realize that? Those two vacations were about $1 million Canadian dollars to the Canadian taxpayer, so that the Prime Minister could go hang out in Montana, you know, and so that the Liberal caucus could spend $428,000 and change in New Brunswick for their caucus retreat.
And on that note, we are out of resources. That was in my writing, of course, so
Aw.
I'm conflicted on it because I always like to ensure that New Brunswick Southwest. This meeting, actually, before I adjourn, very, very quickly, just announcements so you are aware. Microsoft is presently working on the request sent to them by letter. Due to the number of communications in the thousands, they are seeking more time to provide this to committee. The deadline was today. I've allowed them. This was to be just earlier. I've allowed them to extend their deadline. On that, this meeting is adjourned due to lack of resources. Thank you, Clerk.